Image Descriptions, Accessibility and Practice, Colorado Department of Labor and Employment. Welcome back. In my previous video, we talked about alt text, and now we're going to talk about long descriptions for images. In my example document, I have an example infographic of food dogs can and can't eat. On one side of the infographic, there's a list that says, yes, please, and it includes all of the foods dogs can eat. On the right side, there's a list that says, avoid these, and has a list of foods dogs cannot and should not eat. However, this is an entirely visual product. It is an image, which includes smaller images of things like pumpkins, apples, bananas, and bacon, corn, and chocolate. And it also has images of text. And these are all things that folks who might be blind or low vision will not be able to see clearly. So it's my job to make all of this content accessible to everyone. I already provided alt text to this image, so folks with screen readers or Braille display programs already know what this image is about, but now I need to provide it in an equally accessible format. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to provide all of the content in this image in my main narrative, because a screen reader or a Braille display can't take the text out of this image and make it available. That's going to be my job. There's many options for providing long descriptions. For infographics, we can do a couple of things. We can provide this in a narrative, like a couple paragraphs, maybe a paragraph explaining a list of things that dogs can eat, and another paragraph of things that dogs can't eat. We could also provide a bulleted list. We could also provide a table. It really is up to the content creator, in this case me, in other cases you, which type of long description will work best. In my case, I always like to make content really easily chunked and digestible, so I'm going to actually make it a bulleted list. So directly underneath this image, I'm going to provide the same exact information as in the image. So first, I'm going to create the title, Food Dogs Can and Can't Eat. And then I'm going to provide the information that says it's an image description. And I'm going to add colon. So everybody knows this is me describing what the content is in this image. There is a couple of reminders inside both of these lists. So the first one says, remember, all dogs have different dietary needs and be mindful of allergies. Okay, I'm going to add that. Remember, all dogs have different dietary needs and be mindful of allergies. Whoops. Human foods, it continues, should be fed to dogs in moderation. Wonderful. Then it starts the list of foods we can feed them, and it says, yes, please. And now I'm going to start a bulleted list. So I'm going to go to Format, and I'm going to insert bullets and numbering and go to my unordered bulleted list. I'm not going to order these because they don't appear in any particular order. It's not like pumpkin is the best and bone broth is the worst. It's just an order of any of them can be eaten at any time. So I'm going to provide them in an unordered bulleted list. And it looks like I have pumpkin, apple, banana, pear, pineapple, watermelon, strawberry, tomatoes, and honey, and the list goes on. You get the idea. I would complete the rest of this list to make sure that it is equivalent and exact and exactly describes the information presented in this infographic. Next, I'm going to present the information they say to avoid. There is also another asterisk on this list, and it says, please avoid feeding the food below to your dogs because most are extremely toxic for your furry friends. So I'm going to add that. Please avoid feeding the food below to your dogs because most are extremely toxic for your furry friends. Aww. Avoid these. And now I'm going to also insert another bulleted list and start with the avoid list. Oh, bacon, my dog's going to be heartbroken. Bacon, corn, and chocolate. And then we have milk, bread, and avocado. And again, we would continue this list until I have completed the end with salty foods and nuts. And so now I would have all of the same textual information that's included in this infographic presented in my narrative. So folks who can see this image will have the image, they'll have the infographic, and they'll be able to interact with it. And then folks who cannot see it or cannot see it as equitably will also still have access to the text and be able to access the information in the same way because they will have the list of all the information that's available. This bar chart is an example of some data that we would describe. A lot of times when we're describing data, we want to make sure we're not only providing alt text to identify that this is a chart and to identify for screen reader programs that it exists, but we also want to make sure we're providing equally descriptive information for our blind and low vision users so they can interact with this information just as equally as everybody else. So like I did before, I said, hey, there's alt text here. We know this is a bar chart comparing products. But what I'm going to add is the data points. Similarly, I can do a narrative paragraph. I could list out the data points, or I could provide a table. I'm going to actually choose to provide a table because a lot of times in data, we decide to provide tables to represent data. So I'm going to do that. So I'm going to go to my insert option and I'm going to go to table. And it seems like I'm going to need probably two columns and 4 rows. One for the specific, one column for the specific type of data, and then the other for the data report, the percentage. So I'm going to put that out there. And I'm going to say for my header, measurement, and then percentage. And I have LS external completed. And maybe instead of measurement, I'll do product. There we go. And then I have LMI external completed. Oops, I need one more line. And I can insert another row by hovering over my table and selecting the Insert Row Below button, or I can select my table, right-click, and select Insert Row Below or Above option. I'm going to go LS External Remaining and LMI External Remaining. All right, now I'm going to put in my percentages. So my first one is 85.23%. My next one is 98.96%. My third one is 14.77%. And my fifth one is 0.52%. And because this is a table, I'm going to make sure I make it accessible like I always do for my tables. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go down to Table Properties. I'm going to select Row and I'm going to pin that header row. And then because I always like to visually distinguish my header row, I'm going to bold that header row. Not required, but something I like to do. So now the description is provided for all the data points in this table or in this chart. I have a table of each of the bars in the chart with all of the data points. Similarly, if you have a chart that you're presenting, you could also link to an accessible data table that might exist on a website or on a dashboard somewhere that you have. So that's how to add long descriptions, long image descriptions for complex images. Find more videos on our YouTube channel at CDLE_DLSS.